So, if you are here to just talk about how to live easier, I'm going to talk about it in terms of understanding what you really want, understanding what your needs really are, understanding what the needs of other people are, asking questions, right, to help them discover what they really need and want. A lot of conflict comes from people not knowing what they need and want, but having a problem. Right? Have you experienced that, being at odds with someone who didn't really know what they wanted? They just knew they had a problem. Or maybe you were the person who had a problem and you didn't know what you really wanted. I want to help us understand and break a cycle that is present in every conflict imaginable. Okay. So if you are here for that, type I'm here. And let me share a few more. Okay, you're here. Hold on one second. Live. Okay. So let's start at the beginning of the cycle of conflict. I don't teach a lot on conflict resolution anymore because I realize I prefer to help you not create it. Okay, so that's why I'm not really going into conflict resolution. I'm going into the cycle of conflict so I can help you stop creating conflict and actually communicate and create with people from a clear space. Okay. So how conflict happens is something happens, whatever it is, right? Um, a person yells at you, a person doesn't return a phone call, a person goes missing, a person comes home late, a person does something we feel is inconsiderate. Something happens, whatever the something is. It's important for you to understand that how you feel about what happened and what actually happened can be two different things. especially especially if you have a habit of staying in your head. Okay, sometimes what is happening is different from how you're perceiving what is happening. Can we agree on that? And if you know that, then you can create space. Okay, for what? For questions. So if you know that you can create space, that means realizing it's your interpretation, and your interpretation is important. It is important. It is valid. It may not be accurate though. That's questionable. It's important and it's valid. Why is that? Because you feel it. It's important because you feel it. It's valid because you feel it. It's valid because whatever is going on in your head that produced it went on. Okay, so I don't like to get in the habit of invalidating people's feelings. So I never want to say you're feeling that for no reason. You're acting like that for no reason. There's always a reason. And the feeling is always valid. It may not be based in truth, therefore not accurate, but what we really don't want to do is get in a tussle with someone about their feelings. Because then that begins to be an egoic tussle, and we know nobody wins on that realm. Nobody wins because the realm of the ego is about power, And if you really want to resolve conflict or develop some sense of closeness with a person, then going back and forth about what people should feel is pointless. Do you agree with that? Can you see it? So when I was over on Instagram, I was teaching about the 4 agreements. And I want to highlight number 3 on the 4 agreements. So if you just popped on, we're talking about living an easier life with others. I'm reading from my own workbook, which is called Self-Intimacy. And I'm about to also read from the 4 agreements. All right. So anybody who is here, say here so I can know. I see Ryan tapping the screen, so thank you, Ryan. I'm just sharing a little bit more. Okay, hey Shelly. I know Ryan's here. Shelly is here. So the 3rd agreement is don't make assumptions. Now I want you to pay attention to this first part. It says, find the courage to ask questions. Now, I'm not going to reteach this lesson. It's over on Instagram. You can go to my Instagram page and listen to that. But it says, find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Don't make assumptions. This is how you're not going to make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. When you are wanting to be close to someone, when you're wanting a relationship with someone, when you want a connection with someone, you don't form that connection in your head. You don't form that connection with your thoughts. You don't form that connection with what you think about what they think about. You don't form that connection with your fears. You don't form that connection with your avoidance tendencies. You don't. You create a connection by inviting someone into your world and offering yourself to step into theirs, right? And so when you don't have this exchange, it's either going to be one way or shallow. Let me go to my recent book that I'm writing and read from there too. We're going to pull from all of these resources, right? Because I love when I create ease in my connections. That could be friendships, that could be business partnerships, that can be with loves. I love to create ease, okay? Everything A1, what's up? So here's what I say. This is in my book called Cultivate Closeness. It's not finished yet, but I'm going to read from it. So I named this section The Comfortable Rut. The Comfortable Rut. Thank you so much, everything. A1. So it's called The Comfortable Rut. Hey, Nikki, how you doing? The Comfortable Rut, yeah. So there's a particular kind of friendship that almost everyone has. It's a friendship that feels solid and reliable, but is limited, right? Let's say you've known this person for a long time, and if someone asked, you would call them a close friend. You might even call them your best friend, and you would mean it. However, when you think about how much you assume about the person and how little you ask questions or how unengaged they are with your responses, the feeling begins to make sense. Are we even paying attention to each other? Friendships become easy and limiting because they have stopped requiring anything of either person. We just show up, right? We just show up. You know your role. You know the topics to talk about. You know the topics not to talk about. You know how much is too much to share, and you have adjusted inside those limits. And the connection is functioning, but it's not evolving. This is called the comfortable rut. And it is one of the most common ways that emotional distance sets in. It goes unrecognized. You don't notice it right away because you feel the familiarity of the bond. But familiarity without ongoing vulnerability and engagement is just a pattern. You're in a pattern. Two people moving through their established pattern is not intimacy. It might have been intimacy, but it's not now. And you feel it, right? Have you ever had that experience with someone? It could be a family member, a friend, a loved one, or whatever. The rut builds when your answer to their question of how are you is fine instead of your honesty. It happens when you don't ask the deeper question. You just settle for what they gave you and continue to change the subject. The rut is also in the avoidance that we show when we decide to laugh something off instead of naming it or calling it what it is, or making a joke about something that really hurts, right? So, one of the ways to be easier with a person is to ask questions. Find the courage to ask questions. And let me read this from the Four Agreements. It says, find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Again, I'm not going to reteach this because that's over on Instagram. So what kind of questions can we ask? That's where I'm picking up from here. And y'all say, yes, you have experienced this. The question is always, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And that seems kind of simple, right? And there are many different ways of asking, what do you want? How can I support you? What can make this better for you? Where can we come to an agreement? Searching for agreement, searching for harmony, not reasons to stay on divided lines. But you got to find the courage to say what you really want. And some people struggle with what they really want, so they don't say it, right? Have you ever experienced struggling with what you really wanted and not asking for it and not saying it because you didn't want to seem clingy, you didn't want to seem needy, you didn't want to seem thirsty or desperate, you didn't want to seem some kind of way. So you didn't ask for what you wanted because you felt uncomfortable and you didn't get it. And the comfortable rut continues. The emotional distance continues. And so instead of addressing it there, you go for the behavior and you start talking about, well, you don't call me. Well, you don't talk about anything. Well, you don't spend time with me. Well, you don't do this or that. But are you asking for what you really want from the beginning? Do you feel comfortable doing that? Or do you judge yourself? Now, everybody wants something, and that's the part that I want to get to. Everybody wants something. And I call these somethings that everybody wants, I call that intangibles. Okay? It's not something that you could see, it's something that you could feel, and you know when it's there, and you know when it's not. Okay? So most of us want something. Okay? Most of us want understanding. Nobody is talking and not wanting understanding. That's you, and that's the person talking to you. So if you focus on more of understanding and less on what you want, then you might be able to ask more questions. Wouldn't you love it if you told somebody something about how you were feeling or how you were seeing things and they leaned in with more questions? Can you tell me more about that? When did you start feeling that? When did this start? As opposed to taking offense to it, like, what? So you saying, oh, wow, and doing all of that? If you want a soft life, your soft life starts inside of you in these spaces. The soft life is not going to happen just because you take a bubble bath with coconut water every night. The soft life is going to happen because you soften in your internal environment. Yes or no? And I'm making sure I follow everything, A1, because I don't think I do. I just did. Everybody wants understanding. So what if you could have it in your mind that you want understanding first? What do you want? I want understanding. And this is not a cliche. This is true. If you understand yourself in a particular area thoroughly, then you will not feel as desperate to get someone else to understand. I'm telling you what I know. When you understand yourself thoroughly, self-understanding, that's in my book, self-acknowledgement, self-understanding, and integration. When you've done all of that, you don't stop wanting to be understood, but you're not in a desperate situation to be understood. You want people to have an opportunity to step into your mind. You want people to have an opportunity to step into your world. You want an opportunity to share with others, but it doesn't feel like a desperation. It doesn't drive you beyond your normal means. You can gauge pre-contemplation real easy. Y'all remember pre-contemplation? I taught on that just recently. That came out of my book called Presence, the workbook for empowered empaths. See, when you are in a desperation because you have not formed deep self-intimacy, you get in this desperation to be understood, and you can't even really tell when a person is open or not. If they say, yeah, I'm open, you think they're open. Well, they said they were open. You leave the conversation thinking, oh, they heard me, when all they did was hear your words. They didn't understand. See, the reason you go through those spaces is because within you, have not developed in that area a deep sense of self-intimacy. Self-intimacy, the way I teach it, is self-acknowledgement. I'm going to acknowledge what I want. I'm going to acknowledge what I feel. I'm going to understand the importance of it, why I feel it, the effect of it, and I'm going to give it to myself, and then I'm going to integrate that in the way that I act with others. That happens, right? And then you can tell, because you're not desperate. Your nervous system is not hijacked by a trigger and desperation. You could tell this person is not open right now. They don't even see that this is a problem. And so my strategy is not to force this. My strategy is not to push the point or try to work it to get them to see. I'm trying to get them to see. I'm trying to get them to see. You don't do that anymore, right? Because you desire a soft life. So you see the person is in pre-contemplation. You give them a little bit of the information and you back off. You decide. Do I want to kind of labor through this with the person to see if they're going to change? Or do I want to move on? Or do I want to have a conversation? Do I want to set boundaries? What do I want to do? Hey, Hawk. You see, because when you understand yourself in a deep way, I'm not talking about understand that your emotions are valid. I'm not talking about that. There was a person in my life a few years ago who used to fuss about, my emotions are valid too. My emotions are valid too. And I would be like, I wonder why they keep saying that to me, because I believe their emotions are valid. In fact, I invite them. So I'm trying to understand where that was coming from. And one day they said, I invalidate my own emotions before I speak them. I already feel it like it feels silly. Thank you, Hawk. I already feel like it feels juvenile. It feels this, it feels that. And so before I speak them, I judge them. So then I think that you're going to judge them too. So I fuss. That's some deep introspection. Some of you may do the same thing. You invalidate what you want before you speak it, if you ever speak it. You may drop hints, or you don't even know what you want. You just want to say what you said and wait for the person to take accountability or something. But I guarantee you, right, projection. I guarantee you, though, hear me out. If your soul wants understanding, but you're demanding accountability, even if you got the accountability, it's still not going to soothe you. If your soul desires understanding, but you're demanding an apology, you're still not going to feel soothed. You're still going to wonder why you're struggling. That's why it's important to know what you want, right? If you want understanding, anything other than understanding is not going to work. And you need to understand that about yourself. Because too many times we are fighting over principles and ideas and right and wrong, when that's not even what you really want. You probably don't even care about being right at the core of you. At the core of you, you just want some understanding, but you're fighting about ideas and opinions and who said and who did this and who. You're fighting. And your soul does not get it. So not only knowing what you want, but understanding where the person is in that stage of change to see if you can actually get it. Okay, thank you. Let's continue. Another thing that we want in our soul is understanding. I said understanding. I'm going to say it again then. Somebody must have needed to hear that again. Understanding. You want understanding. You also want acceptance, don't you? Tell the truth. Because a lot of times, hey, how she trades. A lot of times you walk around and be like, I don't need nobody to accept me. I don't need no, but you do. Hey, tomboy. This is where self-intimacy comes in. But you do. Your soul is one of many. And so the essence of you is oneness. So how can you say you don't want oneness? How can you say you don't want harmony? You do, right? But the problem is you try to get it from outside, but it's not inside. You have not accepted some things about your relationship. You have not accepted some patterns that you're enacting. You have not accepted some of the things that this mirror is showing you. And so you want acceptance, but you want to force the other person into it. Hey, tomboy. You want to guilt them into it. Because you know how I know you want to guilt them into it? Because you say things like this. It's a shame that I do such and such and such and such. And all I asked was for you to XYZ. You want it from the outside. I was thinking all the things that I gave, and I have nothing to show for it. You want acceptance. You want acknowledgement. You want understanding. You don't really want to be fussing about the situation. But you have to acknowledge that within yourself. I want acceptance. Because maybe, it'd be like that, right? So, Nikki, you said, I lost my desire to wait on others. And if that was a true desire, I hope that you discover it again. But you do it with people who inspire you and invigorate you, right? I hope you still have it. Because when you lost your desire, that's bringing you into a lack feeling. And I don't know if that's what you really meant, but I lost my desire. It sounds like it's going away from abundance. Okay, it's going away from abundance. But you need to accept that you want acceptance. What you fussing for if you don't want acceptance? I don't need to belong to this family. A lot of times, all of that contraction is masking some grief. It's masking grief, right? Because you really do want to feel like part of your family. talking about self-intimacy. You really do want to be close to your person. You really do want to be on the inside of certain circles. And if you don't, this is not for you, right? But I'm talking to the people who feel that inside. Like you didn't really want to be a loner, but you made the choice to do it because it was healthy. And there may be some grief in there. And acceptance, even of the grief, is important. Accepting that you had to do something that you really didn't want to do. That's important, right? Because if you don't accept that and understand it deeply, you will get in scenarios with people and not place boundaries. You will stay long and drain yourself. You will stay there searching after, running after, hoping after some potential because you don't realize that there's some grief from maybe a previous separation. Maybe it was a friendship that ended abruptly. Maybe it was a romantic relationship. Maybe it was your family. Maybe it was betrayal on the job or something like that. In this hurry to hurry up and move on, sometimes going in circles, and sometimes we need to settle down and say, I'm really grieved about that. I know I can create better. I know how I moved there and I can create differently. At the same time, I'm experiencing some grief. And I don't want to try to soothe that grief with another relationship. I actually want to feel it and move myself into acceptance. The stages of grief, that's real. Stages of change, that's real. Okay. How about this? Everybody wants forgiveness. Now, I'm not talking about forgiveness in a Christian sense. I'm talking about you want to be released from the role of a painful story that you played a part in. You want release from that. Yes or no? So when you're saying, I want forgiveness, it's not saying that in the Christian sense. What you're really saying is, I want restoration. I want an opportunity to be in your life and live from another part of my being and not have what I've done hold me hostage in this relationship. I would like the freedom, right? So I want forgiveness. So sometimes when you haven't admitted that I want forgiveness, you'll walk around saying, well, I don't let them think what they want to think and let them this. And you take on that energy. It's very ornery. But that's not what you really want. We're talking about a soft life here, right? Sometimes you want to be esteemed. You want to be held in high regard. Sometimes you want that, right? But how do you esteem yourself? If you esteem yourself, you will not continuously put yourself in the line of fire, because esteeming yourself, holding yourself in high regard, means you're going to make moves to secure what is precious to you. Hey, 20. You're going to make moves to protect what's precious to you. And I don't mean protect like you have someone to fight. I mean protect like nourish, like, no, I'm not going to put you there. No, I'm not going to bring you back into the presence of people who have shown that they don't value you. No, I'm not going to ask you to speak up in situations with people who have shown that they want to reject the seeds that you're offering. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to place myself in the presence of people who invite, who allow, who inspire. But first, you have to see yourself that way. Hey, Bruce, you got to see yourself that way, because whatever you're doing, it's from how you see yourself. So if you see yourself running after the potential of a relationship, then you're going to do that. If you don't see yourself doing it, you're not. I don't see myself becoming a chef because I don't want to be in the kitchen that much. So you're not going to catch me going to school for it. But I do see myself as a warrior, so I'm going to train capoeira. You see, the decisions that you are making are reflecting how you see yourself. If you really value what you're saying, then you don't keep putting yourself in spaces with people who don't value it. Or if you do, you manage how you share that information. For example, if a person is in pre-contemplation, I've taught on this before, that means they don't see that something is a problem. So you're not going to put yourself in a begging space. You're not going to put yourself in a desperation space. You're going to identify, you know what, this person doesn't see that this is a problem right now. And I don't even want to waste my energy, expend my energy on trying to get them to see. I want to figure out what this is reflecting about me so I can make a decision about my existence for harmony. I'm not going to tussle back and forth with people about something I want them to see or some idea or some opinion, because I want to put myself in spaces with people who don't require me to live in my shadow. But if you're used to living in your shadow, you don't even know that you're doing that. You think that's normal. I was talking to someone the other day and they were going on and on about the relationship that they had. And then Spirit said, you used to be in that same space saying the same stuff. And I said, you're right. I used to do that because I didn't know that what I was calling love wasn't love. I didn't know that because the model that I had grew up in told me otherwise. I didn't know that you don't have to fight for this. I didn't know you don't have to argue with people. I didn't know how to let people have their opinions. I didn't know how to turn closeness from conflict. I didn't know how to do none of that. So I used to say the stuff that that person was saying. And so this person asked me what I thought. And I said, if you really want to know what I think you don't know what love is. And that's why you continue in calling this love. They didn't receive it. I didn't get upset. They asked me. I told them the seed was planted. We could change the subject now. I don't have to separate myself from you. Are there other aspects of this connection that we resonate in? Let's go over there. Right? Because over here, there's some pre-contemplation, and I'm not going to tussle in pre-contemplation, right? But in order to get there, you have to be validated within yourself. And I'm not talking about validating your ego. Validating your ego sounds like this. I know what I deserve, and I deserve to be listened to, and I deserve, and I deserve, and I deserve. No, you're fussing. You don't know that yet because you're still upset that it's not coming from outside, right? But when you do the inner work and you know what you deserve, it's like I don't walk around saying, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm a non-binary, I'm a whatever. I don't walk around doing that because I already know how I experience myself. Now I'm going to share that with people who also want to know. I'm not going to sit there and tussle with someone who says, well, you're still a woman. Right? Hey, Rap and Calm. You got to understand yourself deeply. Understand what you want and accept it. Right? Such that here's how you show that you're in self-acceptance of what you really want. You're not begging. You're not pleading, right? You might speak what you want. You might ask for it also. But then you let the other person tell you whether or not they can meet the need. Recently, I was listening to a couple talk, and one said to the other, I can't give you what you're asking for. That was incredibly honest. I can't give you what you're asking for. The person got upset and offended. Oh my God, after all these years, da 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 da. This person just shared honesty with you. I can't give you what you're asking for. That doesn't mean the other person's desire was wrong. It doesn't mean that they need to put their desire aside because the other person can't. The question becomes, now that this person has said this to me, how do I want to move? How can we move together? What do I want? Are we able to achieve what I want together? Do we have the ability, the space, the maturity? Do we need assistance? Are we willing? Is the other person wanting? Next, we want to be, I already said, esteemed. We want to be held in high regard. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? We want significance. A lot of times when we're fussing about quality time, when we're fussing about needs not being met, we're searching for significance. Some sign that the person thinks you're worth attention, or some sign that shows that this person cares or is interested, some sign that shows that they're not going away or floating farther away from you. You want some sign of significance. That's why people say love is action, because they don't know how to know love outside of action. But understand that people can act in loving ways and not love you. They can be in fear. I had to learn that the hard way. So love itself is not action. Love is a force. Love is something to know, right? But your connection takes action. The strength of your connection depends on action, reciprocal action, right? Yeah, love is not action. Love is a different vibration than action. Action is something that exists on this 3D realm. Action, cause and effect. That's action, yes? But love is not 3D. Love is not in this physical realm of seen, heard, and felt realm. Love is higher than that, but it also exists throughout that. And it may exist with or without action. However, you might have a language of connection, right? So that book came out years ago. Hey, AP, that book came out years ago, Love Languages. And we thought that those authors were talking about love as the force. Those authors were talking about connection. You got to read the book. They were not talking about love, even though they called it love language. They're talking about the way you connect with others, the way you form connections, the way you bond, the way you flow. That's what that was talking about. So love is not action. Love is God. How is God action? When God doesn't even exist in this realm of cause and effect. Action and consequence. We got to think more deeply about the things that we are saying. And somebody might say, it's not that deep because love is still action for me. I get it. It's cool. I'm talking to somebody else that wants to come out of this framework that keeps you locked into something that you can't get out of. Love is not action, but connection takes action. And the quality of your connection depends on the action and the receptivity of the action, the cycle of giving and receiving. The quality of your connection depends on abundance. The quality of your connection depends on openness and these intangibles that I'm talking about: understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, esteem. But you got to start within yourself first and share that with someone, as opposed to looking for someone to do it. I'm just looking. Let me tell you, can I tell you something about myself and my experience? And I feel like I got some experience, so that kind of makes me an authority because I'm an elder. I'm 48. I'm almost 50. I know somebody's sitting there saying, age doesn't matter. Just relax. I was just joking. All right. So listen, but it still matters. Anyone who has ever told me that they're looking for someone to be safe has never felt safe with me. Never. Because they don't have it within. So inevitably, They're going to feel some kind of way about something I've said, something I've done. Oftentimes, when they're looking for safety, they're looking for someone who's going to agree. They want agreement. So I might say, hey, this is how I see that. Oh my God, you're not safe. Now I'm walking on eggshells. I say. And you should stop walking on eggshells. You really should. You should never walk on eggshells. And I'll say that to anyone. Anyone who thought I might be safe for them outside of my clients, they never found it. That's why when somebody comes to me telling me they're looking for safety, I say, I'm not safe. Because what you're talking about, I'm probably not going to do it, and I don't want to do it. Right? I'm here for someone who already feels safe within themselves. Now, if you don't feel safe, that's not a slight against you. That just means that you are where you are. But the truth is, my safety is not an antidote for your lack of it. Your safety is. And that's why I teach from self-intimacy. I had to learn this stuff experientially and professionally. If you don't know me, I offer coaching, both group and one-on-one coaching on topics like this for people who want to ascend and they love metaphysics and they love psychology and they want to expand and evolve. That's who I'm here for. Right? And sometimes my message doesn't hit people at the time that they're ready to make a change, so they feel a little offended by it. But they always come back around and say, I get what you were saying now. It always happens, right? Let's continue. You want compassion. This is a big one. Do you know a lot of people, they don't know what compassion is? And they will say, this is what they'll say. I don't know what compassion is because no one ever showed it to me. You know what that's saying? You've never been compassionate towards yourself. So if I sit here and expect you to be compassionate, I'm going to self-sabotage. You might be compassionate when everything is going well and you just met me. Long as I don't press a particular nerve, you're going to show compassion. Oh my God. Well, you know what? How can I support you? You're going to be like that. When it's brand new, right? When there's no pain history. When I didn't touch one of your nerves, you got compassion. This is what I know about human existence. But when you haven't shown deep compassion to yourself, you're not going to be able to offer it to anyone. When you're upset, when you're triggered, when your nervous system is hijacked, you're not going to be able to, because that ego is going to come in and tell you the same stuff it always tells you about everyone. They're against you. See, that's why you shouldn't open up to people. See, that's why nobody is safe. See, that's why you need to be to yourself. See, that's why you can't trust people, because people think, and see, that's why. That's what your ego is going to start telling you. And for good reason, because you've been through some stuff and it's been hard. But at some point, we must grow out of the egoic existence so that the ego serves spirit rather than the ego leads. Okay? So compassion, some people don't even know what that looks like. So they type it in ChatGPT. Hey, Sade. Let's ask ChatGPT. How can I show compassion? That's what they do. Compassion is something deeply felt. It arises because you have a soul connection with yourself and you see the other person as another version of yourself. And because you see the other person as another version of yourself, you refuse to diminish them, right? You might set something straight. You might tell the truth, but you understand how it feels to be in pain, or you understand how it feels to be caught off guard. You understand how it feels. You're not going to let that take over the truth. You're not going to let that hijack the conversation, but you do have a moment of saying, hey, I know that sucks. Let's ask AI, how do we show compassion? Because that's what people are doing. You know that, right? And AI has a certain language, if you didn't know that. It does. And people who are soul led, they can tell the difference. When I read posts, when I read books now, AI has written all of it. And I think to myself, I just so appreciate the human soul. I really do. So let me ask. So this is what I typed in. How can I show compassion to my friend who failed a test? Okay, so here's what it said. Remind them that it's not the end. Use phrases like, this one failure doesn't mean you're a failure at life. It just means you hit a bump in the road. It says share positive examples. Tell them about people or even yourself who face setbacks. Encourage self-reflection. Help them think. Now, I just asked to tell me how to show compassion. It says, what do you think went wrong and how can you fix it? Imagine that you just failed a test and you ask, how can I fix this? But you're still in an emotional space. Is that going to help you? I'm just saying. Offer practical help. If they're overwhelmed, offer to help them study or find a tutor. You could also run errands or help them with chores. It's not even clinical at this point. It's soulless. It's soulless. It says your role is to be a steady, encouraging presence. Avoid making them feel worse by comparing, but some of this might make them feel worse too. So imagine you don't know what compassion is and you read that. Well, I'm showing compassion. You are not. You are not. How about some questions? The fourth agreement, going back to that, the fourth agreement said, find the courage to ask questions. Okay? Your friend failed the test. How are you feeling right now about it? Compassion also is a spiritual practice. It's learned as well. How are you feeling about this? Right? And holding space for the emotion. What's the worst part? Is there anything you fear, or how does this affect you going forward? How do you feel about that effect? Or what's something you really want to say but haven't said about this yet? When you look into your heart space, or you feel into your heart space, what message is there? What is your heart saying? Right? What is your mind saying? Because you know the heart and mind could be saying two different things. I want to help you talk through this. That's compassion. I want to listen and offer whatever it is that you need. What do you think you need right now? Here's the list. They might need understanding. They might need acceptance. They might need forgiveness, but you don't know. So you need to find the courage to ask a question. And maybe they say, I don't know what I need right now. Right? What can you say to that? That makes sense to me. Right? Because I wouldn't know either. But I want you to know if anything comes to mind, I'm here. I want you to know if there's any way I can help you. If it's in my ability, I want to. Right? If you just want to vent, if you want to talk about it, if you want to study together, any and everything, I'm here for that. Why? That's compassion, because you have compassion. That's not giving them advice and asking them how to fix it. and giving them some kind of love and light, well, it doesn't mean you're a failure. No, you are not a failure. You're this. Have you ever tried to do that? When a person was expressing a feeling, you jump in and try to give them some logic. The emotional realm really doesn't want logic in that situation. It wants compassion. Compassion, right? Well, what do you think you did wrong? And do you not think that you could have done something different? And are you taking accountability? And you go into all of that, and none of that is compassion. But you can tell whether or not a person has compassion. Just listen to the way they talk to themselves. Do they jump out of an uncomfortable emotion, change the subject, make light of it? They're having a problem with compassion. Now, I'm not talking about situations where you need to, like you might be at work, so you can't really sit in that emotion. That's different. But in a conversation, do you create emotional distance because you feel uncomfortable, right? And do you recognize the discomfort in other people? So I don't know about compassion fatigue, but what I do know is how to heal from absorption. Because a lot of people absorb other people's pain, and then it activates their pain. Hey coach, how you doing? And then they feel drained and they don't feel like giving or sharing, or they need to shut down, right? And that's two different things. It's not compassion fatigue usually. It's absorption fatigue. One of the ways that I went viral when I first got on TikTok was I made a simple post. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to get ready to go in a minute. I made a simple post and it said, empaths, stop absorbing. Post went crazy. I'm going to try to find it and put it on my story. Over 2,000 people made comments. And you know what they said, most of them? I can't help it. I'm an empath. I have to. I don't know how. Teach me. Being an empath doesn't mean you absorb. When I say absorb, what I mean is you hear someone else's pain and it connects to your pain. So you begin to feel it deeply and you call it their pain, but it's really your pain. So when they walk away, they feel better, but you're still feeling yucky because now you got to deal with your pain, because you only know how to connect through sympathy. You only see things from your own mindset and your own experience, and therefore you absorb. Now they walk away and you got the yuck on you. Yes or no? You see someone in pain and you go into I would want someone to help me, and I know how it feels. For the most absorbing meme I ever saw in my life, it says, my therapist told me that the reason you go out of your way to help others is because nobody helped you. I really hope the therapist led that person out of that thought. I really hope so. Helping others should overflow from your discernment and your crown. And that takes practice, not because you're in some shadow space of your heart or some shadow space of your solar plexus and such. That's how you get drained, right? And so if any of y'all are new, I would like to introduce myself and let you know I have a private community where we discuss things like this. We get on calls throughout the week. We have a workshop coming up about relationships and polyamory if you're interested in that. But we discuss these things on a regular basis. And the group is for people who want to participate. So if you don't want to participate, don't try to join it, because the app rates you on your participation. And so many of our calls and posts are for a certain rating, and that's people who participate, okay? So if you're interested in a group of like-minded people where we talk about this all the time, and you've been interested in conversations and you got questions, that community is there. I have classes there, self-paced studies there. Some of them are free, some of them are not, right? I have a whole YouTube channel. I have books on my website, okay? So we have unlimited resources for you. So that's the introduction. If you're new here, just let me know. And if TikTok gives you the opportunity, please do consider joining my what is it called? Bulletin board, because I post in there as well. All right, so let me name the last few things that I have on this page. Hold on. If we're not connected on Instagram, connect on Instagram. You can get my earlier teaching that I did there. So some common things you may want: understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, esteem, significance, compassion. You might want communication, connection, emotions. And I ask, what other expectations can you list? Now, I want to tell you something personal before I go, and I don't want my battery to cut out. Y'all still here? Nikki said yes. Ryan said yes. I'm going to close with something personal. It says some comments on this live were filtered. So some comments are being filtered. Sade said yes. Okay. So I study numerology, and I'm about to speak about my numerology and then bring it into some practical space. In my numerology, my coding is that I may feel very emotional, right? But the emotional processing happens on the inside. I feel every bit of it. Every bit of sadness, every bit of grief, every bit of whatever we have to experience, I do experience it. But in my coding, you don't normally see it, but it's expressed through the way that I care, the way I set those emotions on the side so I can hear what you're saying. It's in the way I ask questions because I care. It's in the way that I show compassion. It's in the way that I soften my tone. It's in the way that I might put my hand on you. I'm a very emotional being, but my coding is that I experience it inside, and it is expressed through what is called the earth element of me, which is nurturing. It's not watery emotion. Watery emotion is cry easily. Watery emotion is expressing raw, unfiltered emotion. My emotion is earth-based. So I'm very grounded in my emotion, even if on the inside I have a lot of turbulence, right? That's something about me. So one of the last things I read is somebody may want emotion. They might want emotion. So if they don't know that they want emotional expression, they may act out to get it. And it's more than likely not going to happen. Because I'm going to remain in a grounded space, usually. I'm human, so I'm not saying that could never happen. But usually, my coding supports me being in a grounded emotional space, even if there's turbulence inside. My emotions don't disable my thinking. Okay, that's part of my coding, and it's part of practice. So if a person wants emotion and they want watery emotion, they might get very disappointed and assume that I don't care. See, this is why you got to know what you want and how you want it. And you also need to understand the other person you're dealing with. So if I know I'm dealing with a watery personality and I decide to get into a friendship, a connection, or a partnership with a watery personality, I know, right, that either I'm going to have to kind of channel on some of that water to relate to them in a way that they understand, or draw it on some emotional information, or talk in emotional language or something like that, right? Because the person may want emotion. But if they don't know what they want and they just fussing, they may never get it. Someone might say to me, I really prefer emotional conversation, right? Then I could decide, yes, I want that, or no, I don't. Does that make sense? I'm trying to illustrate how important it is to know these intangibles for yourself and with others. A person who feels uncomfortable in their emotion may not ask for that. They may not know how to ask for it. They just might fuss or withdraw and retreat and fall back because they don't feel comfortable. A person who doesn't feel comfortable in their emotions and they want you to feel comfortable is a recipe for a disaster. That's why I said I can be so nurturing. I could be so grounded, so calm. But if that's not resonating with what a person wants, then I'm not going to be safe. It's important. I'm drawing to a close here. It's important to understand yourself, how you process information, what kind of intangibles are important to you. I just read a list of them. You may come up with some more. And express that to others. Okay? Express it. Express it when? Ideally, you could express it before you have the conversation, right? Especially if you know you're going to have a conversation. You may say something like, hey, I need a little bit of emotional support. I have an emotional share. That's asking for emotional support. Hey, I need a little bit of logic here because I'm already emotional and I want to speak some logic and take a different perspective. Hey, I just need some energetic support. Can you hold a space for a vent right quick? Hey, I just need a little bit of sympathy, empathy. I need a little bit of reassurance here. Do you see how important that is? Yes or no? And don't assume you know what a person needs. Ask them. I know you're about to express this to me. Before we start talking about it, real quick, do you think you want something emotional or logical? You just want me to listen? You just want me to hold space? Like, how can I support you before we begin? It helps focus the conversation, right? Sometimes I like to start off like this. What I have to share is not about you. I love it too, Ryan. What I have to share is not about you. I just want to let you know it's really something that I'm working on the inside. That one's a bit tricky because some people do think that what you're saying is about them. Some people do, right? But at least you could say that. Transparency, right? We do a lot of focusing on vulnerability, but I don't think vulnerability is the first step. The first step is understanding thyself, accepting thyself, integrating thyself, and speaking transparently, right? Both people doing that, that sets the stage for the cultivation of safety, of vulnerability and intimacy. In other words, attunement. But we don't just jump to vulnerability. If you do, you might have a hard landing, I'm just saying. Maybe the reason that people haven't handled your vulnerability well, hey Keitha, is because you haven't properly cultivated the space. That could be it too. A lot of times that's it. When I listen to people talk, I can hear it. You don't know how to cultivate the space. You just thought because you had some expression that was vulnerable and it should have been handled well. But you gotta be in such self-love that you set the space for your vulnerability. You set the space internally first, and then you cultivate it with others. The hard and soft landing has been brought up. Wow. Yeah. That's a good way to look at life. Like, how is this landing within me? How is this landing with you? How are you taking what I'm saying? Wait. I noticed that there's an energy here, and it's telling me that this isn't really landing where I intended. Can we talk about that? As opposed to you sitting there getting upset. I could tell it didn't really land where I intended it to land. Can we back up and talk about my intention and to see if we can kind of go a different way? And this is not about controlling someone's reaction. This is just recognizing that sometimes our intended expression, it ain't really landing. Maybe it's a word we use, right? A lot of times, for example, in my coaching sessions, I may ask a person, what are you avoiding? And they'll be like, I'm not avoiding anything. It's not okay, cool. It's not avoidance. Let's find another word. What would you, or another phrase, what would you prefer to be happening? And then they might settle and be like, well, I prefer, right? So there are many different ways to ask a question. And sometimes you don't even know what a triggering word is for a person. Now, we're not holding other people responsible for triggers. That's not what we're doing. We're just acknowledging that maybe you're asking me something else and I'm kicking against the word avoid or fear. Can you ask me that in a different way? Because that's not really landing in a way I think you intended it to land. Am I making sense? I'm here to help us have an easier experience with people. And we can do that by creating less conflict through self-understanding.